Is it possible that the largest retailer in the world, in today's world, could go bankrupt and be no more? Interesting question on today's Deeper History.
Let's go!
Welcome to Deeper History. Today's topic, Sears. Sears. Now, we started off with a little teaser question, and everybody's immediately thinking, oh, Amazon or Walmart. Today, we think those retailers are so entrenched in society that there's no way they would ever go bust. But did people not think the same thing about Sears back in the day?
October 31st, 1989. They were the number one retailer in the United States. The number one retailer.
In 1989,
October 31st.
That was just not that far, not that long ago.
November 1st, they weren't. Walmart had surpassed them in annual sales.
Whoa!
And that was the death knell right there. And
now let's back way up.
okay,
Sears, Mr. Sears started selling, was it watches?
Watches, and
take us through the story.
he started with Roebuck in Chicago, and
Little store,
and got into the mail order business and for watches and accessories like that, and finally the business got so good that he would publish a small brochure type catalog and send it out, mail order. And it was essentially mail order was brand new.
And I'm assuming at the onset of this, it was probably the Chicago area or the
Chicago area. Now, Chicago area at that time in the Midwest was the hub of industry. Typically, salesmen would leave the Chicago area, take a train out into their territories.
And the railroads, because of the Standard Oil had built all the railroads, and all the railroads were designed. The Chicago was sort of the hub anyway, correct?
Yeah, and so you could go just about anywhere in the Midwest from Chicago, but along with railroads came postal service. So the days where horses were carrying packages was gone. You had this. In fact, the United States Post Office kind of pioneered in railway transport. Things coming by rail, so it was the perfect opportunity, and Sears took advantage of it.
Now, today we would choose to go to Walmart over Dollar General simply because we know that if we go into Dollar General, we're going to find very select items.
Right.
We know if we go to Walmart, we'll probably find exactly what we want. It's sort of the same thing's now happening with Amazon because it's so much bigger than Walmart. We're like, well, we'll get on Amazon because we'll find exactly. Is that what ended up doing in a lot of the general stores of the day? Because Sears ended up being able to expand and had so much more offerings than what the local store had.
Absolutely. I was in a store yesterday, and a fellow had two projectors that he could plug in because he wanted to show the TV on the screen. And one of them was the Sound Source, which is a relatively well-known name, and the other one was just an off-brand. And the off-brand was $20 less. And the guy asked me, I guess because I looked like I knew something about it, he said, "Which one would you choose?" And I said, "Well, experience would tell me that I would go with the name brand because it's cost more, and there must be a reason there." And so we got to talk about it. Sears did a marvelous thing. They not only expanded the market for various reasons into the farmland, but they began to brand certain items
and did a remarkable job.
Batteries. I'm trying to think now the name brand for their batteries, and I knew it coming up here. But it became the battery of car batteries or tractor batteries. We talked the other night about J.C. Higgins, which was J.C. Higgins, by the way, was one of their workers and had been with them for 20 years, and convinced them that they needed to have a sporting goods brand. And so they came up and they sold shotguns, which were made by a well-known firearm manufacturer, New Arms, in Connecticut, which already had a great product, and they just put the J.C. Higgins brand name on it, and that worked. Craftsman Tools.
Oh, Sears created two of the biggest brands that I can think of.
Yeah.
Craftsman and was it Kenmore?
Kenmore. By the way, Kenmore is manufactured in Forest City, Arkansas by Whirlpool, which had its own brand. And they were just enough difference to make a difference. Slightly more economical at Sears, and Sears pioneered in service plans, and they would add on value to a product, which separated them from the other products. There was
so Mr. Sears and Mr. Roebuck, they started expanding with the catalog and utilizing the railroads. Memory serves me correct from the history that I've read. You could actually, the farmers in the Midwest could actually just pay the postman.
Oh yeah,
the cash.
Yeah,
and they would give them the product that they had already shipped.
COD order.
So you didn't have to have any kind of credit or anything. As long as you had cash money, you could pay the post. I mean, think about that today. That you order something from Amazon and then just pay the post guy the money. Like,
well, they did. Well, how about the South?
And this made it. I mean, this made it easy.
Yeah. Oh, not only easy, but how about the South, where we still had Jim Crow segregated laws, and for an African American to buy something, they had to go into the local store in town, and then there was always that stigma over it. All he had to do was take his catalog, order what he wanted, and pay the postman.
Right.
And the product was there, and it was just.
And you said in the Depression, now in the other documentary, that the Depression really didn't hit Sears as hard. People were still buying their clothing and those items through Sears. Everything else they were growing their own food and their own.
Absolutely right. It helped them. It helped them bridge that into a new recovery, and they were forward thinking enough, like I said, to brand special items, and as they branded them,
and they used the catalog to do that. Like they would give these Mr. Sears would give these just outrageous write-ups in the catalog about these products.
I was at a Sheffield Antiques yesterday, and there was a bound volume of their catalogs, and way too expensive for me to pick up and walk out with.
But nostalgic nonetheless, you were wanting it.
But I opened it up to a section on carpet, and there were just page after page after page. Carpets in any number of sizes. And in fact, there was a time when you could actually buy a Ford vehicle from Sears.
And a house. Apparently.
A prefabbed house. It would come on the train, delivered to you by Railway Express or whoever was their agent. Set it on site, and then you could
put it together.
Put together, or hire somebody to put together.
Now, I consider myself a student of history, so I'm going to have to ask you a few questions here. Come back in again. You're drifting out of camera. Right. I'm going to have to ask you a few questions because you've been in the Memphis area for many, many years. I knew that Sears had constructed the massive skyscraper that dominates the Chicago skyline even today. Sears Tower, which I'm not sure it's even called Sears Tower anymore, but people I think still refer to it as Sears Tower.
Well, actually, Sears, once again, bought the name rights, much like Landers, and I'm not sure that has expired. Now, see, what's happened is, in 2005, Kmart Holdings, which was just a holding company, bought Sears and brought them underneath the Kmart umbrella, hoping that would give them the boost to combat Walmart, because they were adding so much more shopper product that they could get to. It didn't work, because at the same time we began to get online shopping, which really kind of ate away the increment there that they didn't have. But I think in the 2005 and then obviously 2018, they filed for bankruptcy for the whole kit and caboodle after spinning off. They spun off their credit line to Citibank. They were the first people to actually issue a credit card.
You told me that.
Which
retail, I had no clue.
For retail. In fact, the word on the streets was after the other department stores at that Macy's and others, and followed suit on that. They had to kind of relax their standards to compete with that, because everybody on the street says if you got a Sears card, that's all you need. I mean, it is the toughest to get, and it's all you need. Well, I mean, it was a magic time, because they had the credit, they had all state insurance.
Right, that was another thing you told me that I had no clue.
Like Allstate,
their reach was just
you go down
enormous.
there, you go down their lines. They actually, when the malls started to explode across the country, the typical 4-anchor malls all under one roof, they owned a company that built malls, and they captured it, everything. When Roebuck left, and a Chicago banker or Chicago lawyer by the name of Nussbaum bought. The beauty of this is all through this, if you track it, there were all kind of low spots in this.
Right.
Sears just had grit. I mean, he really did. He was resilient. He would not give up. And as he was not giving up, he was thinking about other markets and other ways to do it.
Now, Roebuck left, from what I remember from history, I think I remember him quoting, I just can't keep up
with
Sears, and I'm just kind of, I wanted to bow out. And probably at the time got a pretty good payoff. Because
sure, I'm sure he did. Nussbaum bought a controlling interest for $75,000. And
what people would kill to buy.
And invited his brother-in-law to be a part owner of it. And so there was the triad. And the brother-in-law and Sears got along famously. Neither one of them got along with Nussbaum. So they eventually bought him out. And the brother-in-law, and his name, it may have been Rosenblum, but anyway, he was the one that had the freestanding store idea. They needed stores. And so in the big metropolitan environments, they had their freestanding stores. The one in Memphis was
and that's what I was about to get to. I had no clue until the Crosstown Concourse project came about that building was even sitting out there. It's if you haven't been, you need to go see the Crosstown Concourse. It's unbelievable. I didn't know anything was sitting out in that side of town because I never drive into the North Memphis area. But when I rounded the corner
at Crosstown and Union,
saw the massive building, and then to find out that wasn't the only one. They had these distribution centers all over the country. There was one in Atlanta, and these centers, huge. They apparently had their own hospital inside the thing. Cafeterias. It was completely, basically self-sufficient. They placed it outside of the city, the downtown area, because I believe the railroads were over in that area, and that's sort of the suburb area. Was it the same idea of when Walmart goes outside of the downtown area today?
Well, you'd have to know a little bit about that history. The North Parkway and South Parkway and East Parkway make a U. They were designed by the same person that designed the Biltmore Gardens.
Okay.
And his idea was that you had this enormous U-shape parkway around, and in the middle there was going to be a mall, just a grand grass mall that ran diagonal from one corner, which would be where Summer and Airways would be, to the other corner, which would be at Riverside.
Okay.
And we're running across there, and it would be a family oriented for much like Central Park in New York. He had a lot of that, and so you would have that constant traffic back there. There's a lot of foot traffic back then, a lot of horse and buggy traffic, and not only that, but there would be plans for a zoo there. There would be plans for a boreal forest, something that you never touched. You just left it the way it is.
Okay.
A small golf course, which came later on. Brooks Art Gallery, which took one corner. But right in that northwest corner, where North Parkway finally dead ends there and ends, it met Crosstown. Now imagine when you could call something Crosstown in the city of Memphis, and it's 4 blocks from Redbird Stadium. Okay, so they picked that site. Now the railroad was there, that's true, but the railroad had long since moved west because it was just going to be difficult to do that downtown. So, but they were right in the perfect corner. And it was a well-traveled, people coming home from downtown into the Parkway system, going out as Memphis was beginning to expand. So it was right there. It would be almost like Wolf Chase is to people in Cordova. It was handy, and it was I can't forget how many levels of retail it had in it, but it marveled anything you would see in a mall now.
So I'm assuming, had been inside that building when it was Sears, and that was a massive. Describe the store. What it was like.
The store was, if I'm not mistaken, four levels, and it was complete. Every level there was automotive and home goods. I think was probably on the lower floor because that's the heavier stuff.
Right.
There was a floor for appliances. There was a floor for more upscale home furnishing, furniture, and that, and then there was a floor for
the clothing.
Where the clothing was, and then the back of that was the warehouse portion where the orders went out. The catalog orders went out to little small towns. Almost every small town in the South had a catalog sales office.
Right, and they had several offices for people, and then I'm assuming a massive warehouse.
Massive warehouse, and I was able to go in it as a child when it was a store. And then later on, I went in as a salesman when it was a warehouse. So you could see it transitioning, and a lot of times it was kind of sad because at one time it was such a bustling place. I mean,
I saw pictures of like escalators.
Oh yeah.
And now is the big red staircase that's currently in concourse, was that on the department store floor?
Oh yeah, that was the entrance level.
Okay.
And it reminds you of something right out of New York City. But it wasn't in downtown Memphis. It was
out.
It was out. And back then, out meant where they were. It meant you were somewhere within the Parkway loop. So.
And there's still tons of homes in that area. I'm assuming that was a heavily populated area at the time.
That was the Parkway system developed into the large multi-story fine homes that they naturally built that way, and so
right. And it's so sad to drive over there because it's almost like that building really was forgotten for maybe 20-30 years. When did the building close?
The building closed.
I want to say the late 80s. Was that what I saw?
Well, the building closed, I would say. The retail part of it had long since closed by then. The warehousing part stayed on through probably the mid 80s.
Okay. So when malls became the hot ticket, they moved their store. They just said, instead of this one massive store in the city, we're going to put a store at the anchor stores at the malls that were scattered around the city.
Well, remember also, while this is changing, distribution's changing. We're no longer shipping a lot of stuff by rail. We're now going. We have a modern interstate system from Chicago all the way to Memphis. We can have our big warehouse in the Chicago suburbs and ship out of there, and people can still have it overnight.
You just don't have to have all of these different massive buildings.
They go directly to the store. They go to either Southland or at that time Hickory Ridge, and there was one in Raleigh. So
the needs had just changed.
The needs had changed completely. You were taking the product to a warehouse, trying to determine what your inventory was and what was going to be the sales item. And Christmas, oh gosh, I mean, it was just unbelievable. I mean, the new items, that was Sears' ticket. They put out a special catalog.
I remember in the 80s,
the wish book,
still getting that catalog and still dovetailing the edges of the pages. I mean, I still remember that, and really Sears was really dying by the time my generation was growing up, but I still remember that catalog in the 80s.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, let's move into the 80s and the 90s. You said Walmart overtook Sears in
November of 1989. They became in volume the larger retailer, and probably in end-of-year profits too.
And to be fair to all other retailers, Sears has been in the news recently just because of the demise, but it's not just Sears that was struggling with this problem.
No,
with lots of stores are struggling with this same thing.
There were a lot of J.C. Penney, for instance, attempted to do the same. Montgomery Ward attempted to go with mail order and just couldn't get any traction with it because Sears was not only, they were not only smart marketers and merchandisers, they were aggressive in their competition, constantly having sales.
Right.
Constantly. And if you got on their mailing list, you would get sales material in between the catalogs.
Right.
And people in their catalog sales office were trained to be sales. Well, while I got you on the phone, I realized you need a set of tires. But have you thought about this? You know what we do this month? This month we have the new Kenmore 600, and I mean it's fantastic. I mean, and so.
And a percentage of those people would buy.
Oh, absolutely. There were people who would think about going into town to buy something. They would buy from Sears. It would be delivered and
easy.
Yeah,
easy. Now the same concept partly is the undoing because where Sears had been innovative and moved with the market, moving like to the malls and all of that, they probably didn't get online when they should have. So by the mid-90s, I believe the catalog stopped in the mid-90s at some point. Yeah. And they were trying to run everything just out of department stores, and they didn't move online fast enough. What are your thoughts moving into the 2000s? What has been Sears' just demise?
Just that. They as companies, if you looked at their portfolio, you would see what they had their hands in. I mean, what they had bought, what lines had been popular. Die Hard was a battery name. I knew I'd get it. Die Hard. And Die Hard the battery. That was because it died hard. I mean, it was a combination of Midwest marketing and
people felt that the brand was under the Sears umbrella. They trusted it.
Absolutely. So they spun that off, and I really don't know who picked it up. I think it was some attempt by AutoZone to pick it up because the name and everything. You just had to have Die Hard battery.
Right.
And they did that with it. Some worked, some didn't. The J.C. Higgins, they had trouble with it, found of it, so they changed it to Ted Williams. It was the Ted Williams sporting line, and just never got traction. When you have a conglomerate that big with that many
tentacles
like
everywhere,
and in doing a lot of things, it's hard to keep coordination on that. It's hard for the left hand to know what the right hand's doing, especially in a competitive world. And all of a sudden, you have players on the field that. How could that happen? How could? On my way here, I saw an Amazon van pull up at a store. I mean, a person's house and deliver. I mean, who's getting hurt here? UPS, FedEx. Everybody
and that's been in the news too because the Postal Service is getting some heat for delivering so much of Amazon's packages, but Amazon can't keep up. They're having to use the Postal Service, their own service, UPS and FedEx.
Yeah, just to keep up with it. So, but they've also made it easier. Now, in the beginning of the catalog sales and that quasi online, which by phone was. It required a person.
Not only that, though, Sears had to actually print all of those, which wasn't cheap, and mail them out.
Oh, yeah.
You had to pay for the mailing. Amazon doesn't have any of that problem.
Well,
and no online retailer does today.
No. It's there. It's right there. It's on the screen. And it gets simpler and simpler to order. And they anticipate customer questions. In fact, the latest thing is the customers who bought this also bought this, and you get, and you're thinking, yeah.
So the question in my mind was, I cannot remember when Mr. Sears died, but he died quite young, if memory serves me correct. If he had been able to see Sears through into this century, I wonder if he would have made the jump to online possibly quicker than anybody else running the company, because he seemed to be just a miraculous visionary.
To make that jump required a lot of technology that simply wasn't that existed. I mean, he used he looked and said, what do I have? Well, I have a rail system for the bigger stuff, and I have the United States Postal Service, which is not ever going to make it selling 18-cent stamps.
Right.
I mean, that's a very, very, very labor intensive. But if they could sell stuff larger that had more postage on it based upon the weight and size, so they had that exists. You're in the heart of the country. The distribution is not a problem as far as you want to go. On the western edge of it, when you run out of customers, you run out of land. I mean, let's face it. There's
Right.
no more that you've done it, and you're probably not ever going to be able to compete with the Eastern Seaboard type unless you put on freestanding stores there, and that's where the mall came in.
Right.
So as things became available, he used it. If he were still alive and the network was there, and by network I mean something broader than just the net. If the things were there, he could use it. He would have. I mean,
Right.
It was just that forward thinking,
Right.
and it's a marvelous story. It was also a marvelous demise, but it was
It is.
inevitable. I mean, it was.
And sad.
Yeah.
It's like, for those of us who are a little bit nostalgic, which I
Yeah.
am, walking through, and I went to the concourse actually this week. We took the girls Monday night and took some pictures. The building is just, it's awing to walk through that and think, man, this just had to have been something for the time.
Oh, it's not only that, but
They said that if you line the bricks up end to end, it would go from Memphis to New Orleans.
no doubt.
And they built the building in a year.
Yeah, but look at, stand back and look at the building. Just look at the what would have been not just a skeleton, but what's there. How thoroughly Gothic but modern at the same time. I mean, if you drove by it, you would just, well, hey, we got to go in.
It's something else.
Yeah.
It is something else. And Sears had that kind of reach. I mean, that's not the only building in the world that Sears put up. They had their reach just stretched all over the
How many times do
country.
you think people would drive by a Dillard's and say, oh, wow, look at that building. We got to go in. I hear they have a coffee shop. We can go in, you know. And, hey, you've been wanting a second job? Well, apply here. They got
Right.
all sorts of openings. They came out with the stock options for employees.
They were very very visionary company.
Yeah.
And like you said, so many products that came out of it. It makes it hard for us to even conceive that they ended up going under.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's a good lesson for history.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's an excellent lesson.
You can't be too big to fail. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of these big box stores fare. Recently, as of this episode of Deeper History, Walmart has just released news that they are getting ready to build, I believe, 8 lifestyle centers in their parking lots. Those big, massive parking lots that tend to be just empty in the back section. So they're going to attempt to bring some entertainment and some restaurants
Community-based retailing. Yeah.
right in to try to adapt to the ever-changing world and to compete a little bit. And Amazon has certainly cornered the market for online, but Amazon has its own share of struggles. They've recently now started charging state sales tax for all of the states, which has made the product's price go up. That has definitely helped the brick and mortar stores because they couldn't couldn't compete with that. And then shipping is getting more expensive, and so Amazon's got to deal with some of those issues as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future.
And see who the next big player and how they go about doing it. And are they going to be kind of a morphed version of Amazon and the big box retailers that provide, like you said, Walmart, something other than that? They provide a destination.
An experience for the customer.
Experience for the customer, yeah.
And it's also going to be interesting because we mentioned that a lot of the turning point for Sears was when they started building all these stores. Amazon, as of last year, has started building stores.
Yeah.
So we'll see. History has a way of repeating itself, doesn't it?
Yeah. But you imagine, and I guess we're wrapping this up, but you imagine family gets the wish book, and it comes on a Friday. And I mean, life stops for a while as they pass the book around, and eyes are just, they're like the kid in Christmas Story when he thought about the Red Ryder BB gun. I mean, it's right there. That's what I want right there.
I don't know if you checked your mailbox this season, but did you see what Amazon sent out this year? They sent out a toy book, an actual magazine for toys. My little girls never get on Amazon's webpage and scroll through toys, but they picked that book up.
Yeah.
And they started flipping through it and making marks. No prices. My mom was so mad.
Yeah.
No prices were in the book.
No.
It had QR codes to force you to scan it.
Or go online.
To go online, scan that QR code with your phone, go online, and then use that one-touch function to purchase it immediately, knowing that grandparents around the world would say, well, get our phone out and let's just go ahead and
let's get that.
And do it
and
right there.
The next question is, and how many do we want?
Right. But going back, all the way back to a technology of the 1800s,
right,
an actual physical catalog.
Yeah.
It's kind of all coming full circle.
Yeah. As much as history does.